Wow! Wowie wow wow. This continues to be the best show in town. And I think that James Gunn, there are so many questions that are now percolating that we're going to discuss right now. But I think one of them is whether or not James Gunn tries to put some of this genie back in the bottle, close the factory door. So, is this an open kitchen? Is this going to continue to be an open kitchen? Or, maybe it does. And maybe James Gunn wants to be the star of this show. I can understand wanting to be the new Kevin Feige, but Kevin Feige is quite well known without all this hullabaloo. So it'll be interesting to see what approach James Gunn takes. I think he's gonna copy Kevin Feige's homework pretty closely, and I think that's a good idea. All right, so as you watch this show, pay attention not to what these men say, but to what they do. And also, what they don't specify. They're hiding in the vague. Remember that I told you that HBO Max was going to be destroyed? And then Zazie got on the earnings call that week and said, don't be silly. I love HBO Max. I want to have its baby and name it something totally new. But where are we today? Where are we today with the most ruthless FU dismantling Hollywood has ever seen? I was originally in my notes going to say one of the most ruthless, but it is the worst. Just a complete disregard for personal. I guess Jason Kilar started this FU trend to talent and executives, but, Zazie said, hold my beer. And now, for Warner Brothers Discovery's next act, they're going to dismantle the Snyderverse. And they've been doing it for a week now. A lot of this stuff, they do it as fast as they can without fans knowing. And then when you get a whiff of it, they just pick up the speed because they're like, oh, they're on to us. Yoinks. Remember when I said last week that if Gal Gadot wasn't safe, nobody was safe? Well, here we are. Because then let me remind you how things went down. So then someone said that James Gunn didn't like Henry Cavill, and he was like, not true. I love Henry Cavill. I want to have his baby. And then he also said Patty Jenkins, by the way, was real nice, but didn't rehire her. He was like, bye, Patty. You're a sweetheart. And then just yesterday, Variety said, Warner Brothers Discovery and DC are considering bringing Battinson into the main universe. And James Gunn said, untrue. But by the end of the day, Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck were both politely fired. Don't worry, we're going to go into more details on this in a moment. And then James Gunn announced that he was writing a new Superman movie. By the way, a friend of mine in the industry, I talked to my, I'm talking to my friends in the industry about this stuff, and one of them had something funny to say. They laughed and they said, I think it's funny that James Gunn hired himself after Christopher McQuarrie and Stephen Knight of Peaky Blinders were turned down. James Gunn was like, who can write this movie? Me. Maybe he can. I'd love to see him succeed here. And Gunn is promising more news to come after New Year's, or he said the holiday, on his and Safran's stage 1 of their DC plan. And by the way, I would not be surprised. Speaking of that Battinson story and Gunn's denial, let's see if whoever he casts as Superman just happens to be in Robert Pattinson's age range. I would not be surprised. And then they'll just build 2 independent Batman-Superman franchises that, who knows, maybe down the line could be brought together with or without Matt Reeves' blessing. That's what I would do. Now that I see it, I'm like, that's the play. And it's a really strong play. I mean, Gunn, of course, would likely deny this if pressed because he wants Matt Reeves to get along with him. I think he's like, wait till Matt Reeves sees what I do. And I'm not talking, by the way, about a dark and bleak Superman. Some of you are worried that it might be like Brightburn. I don't think so. James Gunn was just talking about how much he likes the Richard Donner version. I think he has some, I don't know if Gunn can deliver that, but I think intellectually he knows what he needs, what the assignment is. So I think it's going to be the yin to Reeves's yang, like this famous Jim Lee artwork. Something that is distinctly Superman, but fits with the Batman. Not only so that they can potentially be merged down the line, but because that was so well received and successful. So why wouldn't you want to be, I think from just a sales pitch to the fans' perspective, you say, you liked the Batman, here's the Superman version of that. And I would be quite happy, to be honest with you. And I think that from a business perspective, it's not a bad plan either. Gunn and Safran might be cleverly taking their time building the Trinity out in solo films, just like Kevin Feige did with the original MCU Trinity. And then only after they're firmly established do you bring them together a few years later in a Justice League level event. I mean, as I said, who knows? Matt Reeves might take a look at what Gunn does and get how it goes, you know what? I wouldn't mind being merged with that. I actually like that. I think maybe it's too soon. Matt Reeves is a delicate flower that needs to be tended to carefully. Do it, because I think this is the way to go. But this would solve Gunn's 2 Batman problem. Because he wouldn't have a Batman. He'd be like, we have a great Batman. That's how I would pitch it. I'd say, I don't need to do Batman right now. We already have a great Batman. We have 2 Jokers already because of what Todd Phillips is doing. So I'm going to focus on Superman and probably these other characters. And we'll just see what happens. I think that's actually quite brilliant. It was also very bizarre to see Gunn deliver the news himself on Twitter. It's like, what? Instead of the traditional leak to the press, right, to the trades, or even better, a press event, aka presentation, like Kevin Feige historically does. You know, if Kevin Feige isn't at Comic-Con, he's making some kind of video presentation. And I think Gunn and Safran might still very well do that for their entire stage 1 after New Year's. I think James Gunn wanted to shut this Henry Cavill speculation down, and I think he wanted to signal that he was going for a reboot. I think it's great. End 2022 was saying, yeah, bye Snyderverse, and start 2023 with the Gunverse. And Safran's like, what about me? Safran's like, I don't even know if I want my name on this. Let's see if Peter Safran is even in the presentation, fascinatingly enough. Maybe he comes up and waves and then leaves. We'll see. So this is either all brilliant or a really bad idea. I mean, Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't care. They got someone to finally end the Snyderverse. Will it stick? How upset will fans get? You couldn't support Black Adam at the box office. And some of you say, you know, that's the thing with a lot of these toxic fans. You always have an excuse. You're like, oh, well, we didn't actually want to support Black Adam because we knew his cameo was small and we didn't like that. And we didn't like the Black Adam character and we don't want to support The Rock, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's see if you can inflict any real damage on the new DC. Let's see. But you know, you couldn't do anything for Black Adam's box office. But I continue to caution Gunn against daily interactions with fans. I think it's going to end up blowing up in his face because he's being very vague. And so it leads to a lot of assumptions. Don't make assumptions. When you make assumptions, you know what they say about assuming. And also, a lot of fans don't understand the nuances of Hollywood and PR double talk. So that leads to even more assumptions on the part of fans. Assumptions that someone in the business or who knows the business would never make, but that, you know, this isn't like your friends making DC movies. This is a major corporation with shareholders and many employees whose whole livelihoods depend on this. I do think that James Gunn is still trying too hard to be liked by everybody, and that's also going to, I think, eventually blow up in his face. It can't be done. You know what people like? Success. So just hunker down, get through the gauntlet, and if you have a really successful Matt Reeves level Superman on the other side, you'll be fine. So what are some prime examples of this kind of double talk that I speak of? How about we're excited to work with Henry Cavill on other projects someday? Someday, right? What did I tell you? Hiding in the vague. Meanwhile, Cavill came out of that meeting and posted on Instagram that he was hanging up his cape and that he was all done. Ben Affleck? They didn't say they fired Ben Affleck. They said, you know what? He wants to direct a DC movie someday. Okay, sure. When Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy comes out, I'm excited. Gal Gadot, she was technically fired last week, but she still hasn't said anything. She might still be in a holding pattern because they needed to promote Shazam 2, which comes out in March. But why does Shazam 2 come out in March? What are we doing? Is Zazie only brave enough to take away the residuals from the little people? Imagine the tax write-offs he could get from Shazam 2, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2. There's like $1 billion right there, and he needs the money. I think he's worried about a Scarlett Johansson level lawsuit, but because I think that there are other people that he feels wouldn't sue him. And that's why he's unfortunately bullying them and taking away a lot of their revenue. But wouldn't it be nice for DC fans to instead have a break instead of a year-long goodbye tour? Aquaman 2 comes out a year from now. Why? By the way, Cavill and Affleck's cameos have indeed been cut from those movies, and maybe Gal Gadot's role is too big to cut from Shazam 2. Maybe they feel they need it. Although, I think it's going to be weird to see her up on that screen and be like, I know you're fired. What are we doing here? So more questions, more new questions. Will Gunn have the guts to also reboot the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker? My guess is he does not. But if he doesn't, it will haunt him forever like the Snyder Cut haunted Warner Brothers. It'll never go away because he'll be branded a hypocrite, and it'll be a valid criticism. So if he's getting rid of these people, he has to get rid of anybody who is in this universe. He has to do it. I hope he does what needs to be done. As much as he might like these individuals, I mean, I guess Peacemaker season 2 would be part of this year-long goodbye tour. I just think it would be very hard to come back from that, and it would seem hypocritical, especially because one of those characters is played by his wife. Would he protect that role because of that? I think it's a bad look, and I feel for him. I mean, that's a bad situation to be in, but you know what's worse? Your movies don't work, and you have to rehaul DC yet again. Can Gunn deliver? And also, here's another question. Can Gunn deliver a Superman on par with Reeves' Batman? I didn't think Reeves could do it. I mean, I thought the Planet of the Apes movies had flashes of brilliance, and I think Gunn's work has had flashes of brilliance, so maybe he can. So far, though, Gunn mostly has just one mode, snarky with a killer soundtrack, and then varying levels of taste depending on the rating that he has to adhere to. You know, PG-13 is clearly better for him than R. But as I said, he has had flashes of brilliance, and I didn't think Matt Reeves could level up like that, and he certainly did. And also, Gunn now has a model. He can look at what Matt Reeves did and just do the Superman version of that. I mean, that's pretty nice. Superman has historically, even in the comics, been a very difficult character to get right. In fact, in the comics, they've now replaced him with his son because Captain America became more popular, thanks to the fantastic portrayal by Chris Evans and the handling of that character, who was made slightly edgy and given a will they or won't they relationship with Bucky. Now, I know that annoys some of you, but it's part of the magic formula that made Cap sexy to everyone. It was a part of why Cap worked as a character. Very, very popular. You know who loves Cap? A lot of LGBT people and women. He's got a lot of fans in that area. And I do really love the idea of a classic Superman movie where he's Clark Kent again, as Gunn has promised. I love Clark Kent Superman. Will we get a proper Lois Lane? Somebody recommended Jenna Ortega, and I thought that was actually a really good idea. And a proper Lex Luthor, who I do suspect will be race-bent. And I think there are some really great options for that. Giancarlo Esposito currently voices him on the Harley Quinn animated series, and it is fantastic. Now, I want to be clear, because some of you might be bringing this up. I liked what Zack Snyder did. I appreciated his deconstructing these characters. But I think it's pretty clear at this point, from Zack Snyder's vision to the way things went down with Rian Johnson, that people don't like deconstructing these characters. They want the classic. It's like the nostalgia that's so popular in Hollywood these days. People want what they want, and they aren't interested in playing with these archetypes, unless it's in a different property like, say, The Boys, where that's the whole point of it. But when it comes to the actual delivery of these characters, even Marvel's trying to play with their characters, and people are like, what are you doing? So I think this is a very clear directive from fans. And so a classic Superman story, I would love to see this. And similar to MCU Spider-Man, this will not be another origin story because just like Spider-Man, the origin's been told way too many times. Everybody knows it. And you know what? As I describe this movie, there is no reason that Henry Cavill couldn't star in it, except for 3 reasons. 1, he's not a match with Robert Pattinson. 2, Gunn wants total ownership of his new DC with no ties to Zack Snyder or Dwayne Johnson. We'll talk about Dwayne Johnson. And then 3, nobody likes Henry Cavill. Now, not even Netflix likes him. So let's talk Cavill. I often tell you that Henry Cavill is not well liked in Hollywood, and that's for 2 reasons, basically. He has a huge ego, and he thinks he's a bigger star than he is. And some of you might be like, he's Superman. It doesn't get bigger than that. Well, he's not Superman. He's not the character. Superman is a character. And also, he doesn't have, you're a star if you personally can sell tickets. And also there's something called paying your dues. You don't get to cut right to the front of the line. I mean, Keanu Reeves is still paying his dues and is beloved for it. And also, Henry Cavill does not understand how the business works. And I think that's one of the things that maybe endears him to so many fans who also don't understand how the business works. But Henry Cavill is in the business, and he's been in the business for a few years now, and he should understand how it works. But I think these reasons are why Dany Garcia, herself coming from wrestling, a lot of you have said that Dwayne Johnson's weird behavior lately also maybe is coming from his experience in wrestling. And I think that's a very interesting theory. Wrestling itself having a lot of problems these days, behind the scenes. But I think Dany Garcia, who again doesn't have a lot of experience, comes from a different business. Her only other major client is her ex, Dwayne Johnson, who she's also a business partner with. And I think that's why she's been able to talk Henry Cavill into some really bad decisions. By the way, who was managing Henry Cavill when he turned down that Shazam cameo? Dany Garcia. Cavill says Cavill said in his Instagram post yesterday that he only announced that he was back at Warner Brothers as Superman because Warner Brothers Discovery told him to do it. I think because he knows a lot of people are going to be like, didn't you say you were back? I don't believe that that's true. A, because if Warner Brothers Discovery had really told him to say, I'm back as Superman, he could sue them for breach of verbal commitment. Because he turned down The Witcher. We'll talk about that. And then B, I think what he's really doing is misrepresenting what happened to save face. I think Warner Brothers Discovery did tell him to post something on Instagram to boost the Black Adam movie after its opening weekend. You know, everybody was talking about the Superman cameo except for Henry Cavill. Didn't say anything, didn't show up at the premiere. So I think also, you know, you have to make the talent happy. And they go, well, where's my publicity off of this? They say, okay, Monday morning, you can talk about it. And so that was supposed to be an activation, by the way, where you played around with this photo and he picked the favorite photos that he liked. But no, Cavill and his team decided to instead turn that into an announcement post to try and pressure Warner Brothers Discovery into not only bringing him back permanently as Superman, but also to greenlighting Black Adam 2 and Dwayne Johnson's vision of DC. All of which I told you when it happened. Henry Cavill even did that talk in New York, where he talked where he talked about how excited he was to be putting on the cape again in the future. He was like, he was talking like he was back. And Zack Snyder even swung by for a cameo. Cavill also, as we all know, infamously turned down season 3 of The Witcher, which trended quite a bit last night when he was officially fired as Superman for the second time. People were like, I can't believe that you turned down The Witcher for nothing. I told you he turned down The Witcher for nothing when it happened. And you didn't believe it because although in your defense, you were like, who would be that dumb? And I told you Henry Cavill would be that dumb, but understandably, it was hard to believe. I do feel for a number of you because you genuinely really are drawn to Henry Cavill. But you know, you got to admit some of the flaws. You can still like somebody while admitting that they have flaws. All right, so anyway, he wanted to make sure, why did he turn down The Witcher? As I told you, he wanted to make sure he was available for Superman. He was like, my schedule's clear, Warner Brothers Discovery, when do we start? And then also, he wanted to be a movie star again. And he has, unfortunately, a dated idea because again, there's that ego of what a movie star does. A movie star, apparently, in his opinion, doesn't appear in streaming projects unless you pay him a ridiculous amount of money. I heard he would have returned for a ridiculous amount of money. He was already getting $8 million rumored for season 2. So imagine how much he turned down for season 3. Everybody gets a raise, especially if they have to renegotiate their contract, which he clearly had to here. So he turned down probably about $10 million for season 3. And he's very valuable, I think, to the Witcher franchise. So imagine how angry Netflix had to be to say, okay, Henry, take a hike. We refuse to give you a slight raise, or maybe even a medium, or maybe even a large raise. I think Henry Cavill, honestly, for The Witcher, is worth the money. So they're like, take a hike. We're going to hire Liam Hemsworth instead. Talk about an FU. So that means Henry Cavill lost The Witcher, likely his Enola Holmes spinoff as well, which was so beautifully set up at the end of Enola Holmes 2. I'm upset about that. And also his relationship with the only studio in Tinseltown, Netflix, that is still willing to invest in him. Now he's got nobody backing him up. So what's left for Cavill? Can he go back to Netflix with his hat in his hand? I don't know. I think like Warner Brothers Discovery after he refused to do that Shazam cameo, Netflix likely is just so upset with him on a personal level that they probably don't want to talk to him. And also, what are they going to say to Liam Hemsworth? That contract is signed. I mean, I guess, I don't know, if I was a Netflix executive, I'd be like, how about this other series, Liam? Would you like to be in this other series? But I think that Henry Cavill embarrassed Netflix so much and tarnished the Witcher brand Although, what is this Witcher Season 2 press tour going to look like now? It's going to be quite the popcorn event for us, but will Henry Cavill even do interviews? I mean, he kind of has to because he needs work. So there's still James Bond, which I feel is actually the best fit for him. But, again, look at how much baggage he's bringing with himself at this point. And also, he clearly is difficult to work with. I mean, he quit The Witcher. He left that franchise high and dry for another franchise. So, right after I'd said he had no loyalty. I mean, the timing was amazing. And he doesn't. So why would you hire someone like that? And Kevin Feige still has a boatload of characters to cast, many of which we all agree Henry Cavill would be perfect for. But does Kevin Feige now want Warner Brothers Discovery's sloppy thirds? And again, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. There's just so many red flags around Henry Cavill at this point, and they ain't a Superman cape anymore, that, is this someone you really want to be in business with? Now, Henry Cavill infamously showed up at the Avatar 2 premiere, with this, again, with a little cup being like, please, somebody give me a role. But some speculated that maybe James Cameron would hire him for a future Avatar movie, or maybe for something else. Cameron also has severe likability issues, but Cameron is his own employer, so it's all good for him. Maybe they would be drawn to each other, right? They're like, wow, nobody likes either of us. Let's be buddies. But I think Cavill, again, has embarrassed himself so badly at this point and shown to be not loyal and to be very problematic in terms of negotiations and very sloppy in how he handles his publicity and interacts with fans, that I don't think anyone major is going to hire him. He has a fan base, though, and in the right role, he is quite good. So I think someone will pick him up. It'll probably be quite low down. I mean, he's a name. Henry Cavill is a name forever. I think he is pretty good at advertising himself to his fan base. I mean, him putting that computer together in a tank top, in a sweaty tank top, was legendary because it was just such a good idea and so well executed. He'll get something. He has that Guy Ritchie movie. Guy Ritchie is actually a perfect fit for him. But does he? I mean, that movie hasn't been picked up by anybody. It was a package being shopped around at the time of its announcement. And while some people are like, get new management, Henry Cavill, and he might, but I mean, he needs all the friends he can get right now. Maybe he'll pop up in some Dwayne Johnson projects. I mean, that's probably his best, come to think of it, that's his best chance at a quick gig right now. And it would maybe save Dwayne Johnson some face. We're going to get to Dwayne Johnson in just a second. But I know that Henry Cavill was having these issues before he hired Dany Garcia. And in fact, I think that this attitude was what led him to her and made him feel that she was a good representative for him. So I think this is just it. This is just who Henry Cavill is, and he's going to have to just navigate from here. Finally, as for Dwayne Johnson, who as of recording this video has not said anything, Dany Garcia tried to cheer Henry Cavill up, and I think also save a little face by replying to his Instagram post. But Dwayne Johnson must know that he's also done at DC. So here's our final question. Does he maintain his dignity and go on and pick up Henry Cavill and say, we're leaving, and go on to focus on his plethora of other projects and businesses? Or does he become Warner Brothers Discovery and James Gunn's new Zack Snyder, haunting this new regime, complete with his Henry Cavill Superman in tow? All the small sites that make money off of the Snyderverse toxicity can't do that if they don't have a big celebrity backing them up. And I do wonder how some of them got really good information all of a sudden, specifically about Henry Cavill's Superman. So will they just pick up this whole operation and take it over to Dwayne Johnson's camp? I think obviously the answer would be that would be a horrible idea for Dwayne Johnson. He doesn't need that. But Dwayne Johnson has proven with Black Adam for some reason to be taking this particularly personally. I don't know why he's taking this so personally. He's had flops before, but he seems to be really, really upset about this. Warner Brothers seems to have a special talent for really getting under people's skin. Remember how much Nolan hates them? They got to work on that. And again, I think that Gunn's tweeting all the time could make it, I wonder how the talent feels about how this has been handled. I think he kind of had everyone save face. So I think right now the only people who might feel a little burned are fans. Because some of you felt that he was signaling you that he was going to keep everybody. All right, so what do you think of all these latest developments? More to come. I'm excited to hear what stage 1 is, and we'll see if it includes a Batman. What would you do? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.